How's everybody this evening? Good? You sure? I mean, everybody's kind of like, okay. Right. I'm your moderator for this session, Dr. Delminquoe Cunningham, and we have our panelists today. We actually have Mr. Thomas Holt.
Yes, hi.
And Mr. David Hensley.
Hello.
Right? So, Art Directors Roundtable. Some of the things, as artists, because I've been an artist for 15 years, it's kind of like, how do we think, what does our art director want sometimes? It's kind of getting, I guess one of my questions would be to both panelists, as you're trying to get your vision of the overall scope and idea, you're the big picture. And as a artist, as a creator, it's kind of smaller compartmentalized. How do you bring that down to my level for the smaller compartmentalized?
Personally, the way I handle it is at the beginning of a project, I try to set kind of like what are the key themes of the project, or if it's a section of assets, it's kind of like what are the core things about this. So if it's Killing Floor and we're art directing levels or something like that, it might be, alright, all the levels in Killing Floor need to feel like the infrastructure is broken, so like electricity is busted, and maybe the levels, there was a massacre that happened there, so I want to see like body parts and blood and stuff like that. And then you want to see maybe evidence that people have lived there before, so you want to see graffiti, garbage, stuff like that. And then within that, artists can usually run and do whatever they want, but I want to see like those values brought through the project, basically. So give them a lot of freedom, but try to put them in a sort of a box where you can do whatever you want inside this playground.
Yeah, that's pretty much right on. So I think as an art director, that's kind of the goal. Is you want to make sure that the artist you have the information they need to be successful, that they know the problem that they're actually trying to solve, that they know the requirements, specifically from a gameplay standpoint as well in the field. But they do have like the freedom within that, and so I think that was one of the more difficult kind of lessons to kind of learn coming up from a production artist into being an art director, is just because the solution is not the solution I would come up with. If it's a solution, it's a solution, and kind of going. And you kind of quickly learn that it's actually better from having the artist and the talent and everything else taking it in directions that you wouldn't necessarily originally like want or call for, as long as it's cohesive and it feels like it's in the same vein and it's answering the questions the right way. As far as how I do that with my teams, I kind of come from a background with kind of large art teams, so it's usually style guides, art Bible, but sometimes you don't have the time to kind of fully research and kind of go to that. And so the big things is making sure, again, gameplay requirements are known and kind of spelled out, and that they understand what needs to be solved. And then from a visual standpoint, understanding the theming and kind of the high-level vision. So for instance, on Smite, we're pulling from pantheons. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of known stuff as far as the architecture, but just as important as what we want it to be, like Greek, is what we don't want it to be. And so it's spelling out, there's a lot of overlap between Greek and Roman historical, kind of mythology. And so, you need to kind of narrow it a little bit, but kind of keep those guard posts up in a way that still gives them the freedom to kind of explore and kind of push and be creative in their own right.
Awesome. One of the things that I know that I've listened to before in places that I've worked, like at just within the gaming world as well as within the realm of film, one thing that always kind of stuck with me was something that John Lasseter once said, which is art inspires technology and technology inspires the art, right? How have you guys seen that change over the years, or has the technology really pushed the deliverables with the visuals of art? How have you seen that take shape over, as we've changed technology and we've gone to physical-based rendering and things of that nature? How has that changed the outcome of the visual style, or has it?
I think it definitely does. The look of your game is largely based on the rendering tech behind it. It's a mix of that and then what you as art team want to create visually. So you could make Team Fortress 2 style in the same engine that maybe you make like Unreal 4 could do a Team Fortress 2 style, or it could do something photorealistic. So your technology might guide you one way. Where like, oh, we can do photorealistic rendering, so let's try that. Or your technology might be like, we only support a simple shader, and you have maybe like a lot of mobile games, you might have to go with a more simple art style, less effects and stuff like that. So I think like technology will enable you more options, but it's really up to you as a team on what style you want your game to be. I don't think it really limits you, but sometimes enables you, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you have to take advantage of it. If you look at the games out there that I think kind of hit kind of the top part of like visual style and look and development, especially amongst their peers, it's usually the ones that are taking advantage of the technology that they're on. It's a reason that you see a lot of like PlayStation exclusives and stuff look much better than their kind of counterparts. Is they're being very specific about what goes into it. Even Halo, when it first came out, it's like, oh look, their NPCs have big triangle shapes. Everything in the world is made out of triangles, polygons. Like, you know, World of Warcraft did it very well. Like the style that they came up with was one that was very, very, very efficient for what it was, which they needed to run on the hardware that they do. So I think, you know, knowing what your min specs is, knowing, you know, what your target computers are, definitely has influence into that, and it definitely kind of plays into the style that you need to be able to hit and kind of go to. But it also is driven this other ways. Like I'm always in conversations with programmers, tech artists, pushing, you know, not only for like the finished result and the technology to that, but also tools. A lot of people don't realize the amount of tools artists need. You know, you're always bound by time. And so anything that can, you know, increase your efficiency, you know, make your team faster, you know, multiply, you know, the work you're doing, or allow you to kind of execute against that faster is critical.
Okay. You know, I think one of the biggest things when you're thinking about how to bring all this together, I know you mentioned style guides. You know, how important is the planning process before even getting down to actual productions? I think sometimes as an artist myself, I'm like, I just want to get right to it. Like I don't even want to sit there and think about how I have to do all this. I need to go there and just create this stuff. How important is that planning process throughout all of this?
I think that really depends a lot on like what your game is and who your team is and how big your team is. If, for example, if your team is one artist working on stuff, he's going to be consistent with everything he makes. So you might not have to do as much style guidance. But if you have a team of like 50 artists or 100 artists, every artist has a tendency to go one way with their style. So laying basically a style guide at the beginning will help more things become cohesive. And also it'll lead to less frustration with artists because they may make something that looks amazing, but if it doesn't fit the style of the game, they might take the feedback like, but this looks awesome. You're like, well, it looks awesome, but if you read the style guide, these are the things you need to fix. Rather, if you don't have a style guide, they don't have a clear direction on what to fix and what their rules are. So I think the more planning you can do, the less frustrated artists will be. But also you can iterate on the style guide throughout the game, so it's probably going to change. An artist may do something that you didn't think of at the beginning. You're like, oh, let's integrate that into our process now.
Yeah, I think the context is the big one. You know, especially if you're working with outsourcing or external partners, it becomes more and more critical, which I've done in the past. But I think any kind of visual representation you can give, any kind of style guide or communicating the intent from the art side, isn't just for the artist. It's also for the designers on the team, for the gameplay programmers, for the rest of the team to kind of understand where it's going and kind of be able to buy into that vision and kind of that cohesion that you get between design and art. But it definitely differs. Like, you know, at Dead Space, we had an actual Bible because we were working with studios in other parts of the world and we were outsourcing. We were doing these different elements. You know, for Smite, you know, we're launching in China and we have, you know, publishers and people that we need to communicate with what's going on. So it's a PowerPoint and it's a, you know, folder full of images and things going through. Paladins, which, you know, is, you know, we just recently announced, is still, you know, pre-alpha, you know, friends and family, and the levels we've done so far, the style guides for those are on a whiteboard that sits behind my desk. Like, it's so, you know, and the artists sit right next to me. So it kind of depends on what the intent is, how fast you can move, and the overall goal of just making sure it's cohesive, that you get that quality where it feels like one artist created the whole thing.
I heard something like, say you guys work with a publisher in China, and there might be things about Chinese culture that they want to make sure you don't do in your artwork that maybe Americans, maybe it's cool in America, but in China it might be seen as something
offensive.
Yeah.
Right.
Because things are localized and things of like that nature.
Yeah, or you might have someone that's funding the game that has a certain set of things that they think is offensive, or it's offensive to their beliefs. So there might be, even outside of your art director control, there are those other forces that you have to work with, and you present that to the people that are funding the game and be like, this is the style of the game, and then they can comment on it as well.
Yeah.
So it's not always for the artist, it's also for the people with money and stuff like that.
No, bringing that into the discussion, as we start to look at the vein of Hollywood film and even games as a whole, we started to see things. How many people in here saw like the last Transformers movie? Right? No, you didn't see it? Oh God! I mean, unfortunately, I had to see it.
I didn't see it.
Right. But you start to see, and even with things like RoboCop, you start to see studios that are getting funded by Chinese backers. So all of a sudden, we're in China. We don't know why we're in China with the story. We don't know why the story just all of a sudden went to China, but it did. Have you, over your career, have you guys seen those sorts of things that, kind of delving a little bit deeper of maybe there's something that fundamentally that the finance side of it is like, well, we want to appeal to this, and it kind of changes the style that you're going for, or a certain demographic that you're trying to hit as opposed to another?
Well, I definitely. But that's always been the case. I think at EA, I worked on, licensed games, which obviously you have a movie studio that really wants to make sure, that Lord of the Rings is treated the way Lord of the Rings is supposed to be treated, or Bond, or that kind of stuff. So you have the executive board, you have that, but then you also have the marketing branch and where stuff's going. Dead Space, there was a big discussion about how action it should be versus how horror it should be, and a lot of that was about how much you expand or limit, the market that you're after. And I think that's the same thing. It's like Smite. It's mythology based. We have mythologies from all over the world. We have players now from all over the world. I think at the end of the day, it's money, right? It's users. It's people who pay. It's marketing. It's partners and stuff like that. But it's demographics. It's the people, the culture. It's like how wide of an audience do you want versus not. And I think there's benefits both ways. I think there's a lot of very successful, great games that are very targeted at really small niche markets intentionally, and they do it really, really well. Same thing with film. And then there's other games or other forms of media that they need that broader spectrum for their success, or they can, because obviously you want as many people who would enjoy it or can enjoy it to have your art, right? Like you want people to have that player experience as you can get to. And sometimes there's laws in place in certain countries, and sometimes it's just cultural sensitivities, and then sometimes it's business deals as far as making sure that you're on the right platform or you're in the right, region.
Yeah, I think that's exactly like what our experience is too. You might, the way it influences our games is mostly it could be like which playable characters we make. We don't want to make everyone American. We want to make people from different countries and try to make characters that different groups of people can relate to. So if you get someone to play your game and they're going to pick their avatar and they can't relate to anybody, then they're like, oh, this game sucks.
So it'd be some of that is partially branding as well, because you're trying to bring this community together around your artistic style of game, but the visuals of it, but also gameplay as things fall in together. One of the things that I've often thought about as I've razzed on my art directors from time to time, what are some of the, if you're looking for a really great production artist, what would be like the best 5 qualities that you would look for in a production artist within a team?
Well, so when I hire, there's actually one thing I look for above all else, which is it kind of falls to what my definition of video game development is, which is problem solving. And so, obviously, portfolio is going to be the first thing you do. I don't look at resumes or cover letters or anything else. I click the link and I look at the art first. And so obviously portfolio has to be there, the work has to be there. The closer you can see to the work being plugged into your game, and the closer you can see to that person just doing the job you want, the better from a hiring standpoint. But as far as individual traits, it's the problem solving. And so when I'm interviewing a candidate or just talking to an artist or somebody that I'm interested in joining our team, that's what I do. It's finding out, like, okay, well, what do you like? Which games do you feel are the most successful right now? Which styles do you like? And it's like, oh, I love this game, blah, blah, blah. This one's my favorite. Okay, cool. What makes it better than the one next to it? What makes this game better? What makes this game worse? What makes this art better? What makes this? And having that kind of analytical kind of approach and being able to kind of look at art and not just say, oh, it's pretty, but understand, what are the things that kind of take good art and pretty art and make it, exceptional art or add to that quality is something I want, because every day an artist is making decisions. Millions of decisions. And as an art director, again, we're responsible for the vision and kind of the large problems. But an artist is making decisions every day, and you want people that are smart and are making good decisions and can process information and can learn, because you're constantly learning and changing and evolving and iterating to get better.
Yeah, problems. I think you put it perfect. Like, problem solving is what game development is. And it's in art or game design or, figuring out how to get your characters to look cool within your budgets. That's a problem. A lot of artists, they'll be like, oh, but I want alpha maps to do this and this. We're like, oh, well, it doesn't support alpha maps, so you have to figure out a way to make it look pretty without that. Also, passion is really important. You want someone that's working on art, like does art in their free time, and they're an artist as a life and not just as a job.
Yeah.
Like if you get an applicant that maybe like he worked as an artist somewhere for a year or two, and then for the last 3 years he didn't work anywhere and produced no art or anything, then you're like, this person's actually not. They're not all in art. It's just a job to them. So we want to look at people that they do art at work, they do art in their free time for fun. It's something that they're always interested in. And communication skills is a big thing too. If you need to be able to communicate with the artist and have a normal conversation, they need to be able to take feedback without getting offended easily. They need to look at the work and look at what's best for the project and maybe not exactly what their opinion is. So I think communication skills are a big part of it. If you have an artist that you can't communicate with or doesn't communicate with other people on the team, that could be a problem too.
So I can't put My Little Pony somewhere in Killing Floor 2 and it's going to make it in there.
Artists try to do stuff like that all the time. So. In thinking about that, sometimes do as an art director, sometimes are your approach maybe with a potential hire that you might be looking at two candidates. One person's portfolio might be a lot stronger, but it could be the tipping scale that this person over here might be just an inch behind the other, and they're just a better joy to work with within a team, or they're a better communicator that sometimes is going to tip the scales in the...
Definitely.
Totally tip the scale. If someone's like if they have an attitude when you're interviewing or something and their work's a little bit better, you're not going to pick that person, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I've turned down some amazing artists that I just didn't feel would be able to fit or work within a team environment. That matters almost more. Like, I mean, obviously, I think to get to the point where you're even able to evaluate that team fit and personality, the work has to be amazing. So your candidates at that point should all be good candidates that you would be willing to bring in and do that. But yeah, team fit is huge. And it's a big reason, when we interview people, they meet the team, they spend time with the team and everything else, and make sure they're going to gel, not just with me, as the director and stuff, but also with the team that they're going to work with, that people feel comfortable. Especially, Hi-Rez, a lot of people's like friend circles and like social circles and everything else are the people in the studio. Like it's who they hang out with. It's game night. We go for drinks on Friday. Like there's a lot of that. And so if you're bringing somebody in, you're bringing them not only in from a production and a business standpoint, but also from a social, culture standpoint.
Are there specific questions that you ask at Hi-Rez or that you acquire in the interviews that you found are particularly effective for figuring out who's going to be a good fit?
Like probably, like I don't really think about them in that term. I think there's a couple questions I always ask, but those are more toward, like I said, like evaluating their what? Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat the question. I messed up. So it's fine. It's fine. It's my fault. So the question was, are there specific questions that either at Tripwire or Hi-Rez that we ask candidates while we're interviewing to make sure that they're going to be a good team fit and kind of go through? And my response was, like, I don't know if there are necessarily specific questions. We take people to lunch. It's a lot of just talking through what their past experiences were, how they dealt with difficult situations, how they reacted when things weren't going their way, when elements were there. But I don't know if I have anything that's like, oh, I asked this trick question, and if they answer it, if they say green, they're good. If they say blue, they're bad. I have some of those for other things, but not necessarily for that.
I have one question that's exactly like green or red.
All right.
It kind of goes along with what you're saying, where I might ask something like, describe a problem you had, or maybe an altercation with yourself and another employee. Maybe not altercation is the best word, but
disagreement. Yeah,
describe a disagreement you had between yourself and another employee, and how did you resolve it? And if the applicant starts talking about a lot of drama, like maybe they go on and like, yeah, and management had their head up their ass, and this company was trying to screw this person over, and I was like, the team, we all knew it was wrong. And if you hear stuff like that, then you know they're probably going to be a dramatic employee and start causing problems. And if they say something like, this was the issue, we talked about it, and we resolved it in a good way, and they don't mention anything too dramatic, then they're probably a cool person to work with.
Yeah. And I also, it kind of goes to like kind of the life as an artist kind of thing a little bit, is generally, I think, with people, if they're focused in the right way and they're concentrating on the right things, a lot of that drama and a lot of that kind of stuff just sorts itself out or doesn't necessarily happen. And so, talking to them about what they do, what they're passionate about, like you can just tell by like what their eyes like light up about and what they kind of go on and on about in an interview versus not. But definitely like team interaction and how they deal with stuff, how they deal with iteration, how they dealt with having to throw their work away, or those kind of situations, and just seeing kind of even how they answer the question, let alone how they actually acted in the moment, is very key.
One of the things as an artist, when you're trying to get that perfect portfolio together, right? It should be this living thing. Like your portfolio should be a living organism, right? It should never die. It should never be like, I've hit a pinnacle and I can't get any better than this, because then you'd have your own company, right? But the thing of it is, do you look for maybe if a candidate maybe tailors some things? So what if they kind of had a little bit of art in there that would be along the lines of the current properties and IPs that you have, as well as their own work? Is that something, I guess, really what you guys are really kind of looking for when you're looking at those portfolios and looking at that work?
For us, if someone makes stuff for our game and can show that it fits our art style, then that goes a long way with getting hired. Like we have this, we just started this Killing Floor 2 Steam Workshop. And I have a talk about on Sunday, but it's where anyone can make content for our game, submit it to Steam. If our community likes it, we'll add it. And if people can make content like that and it fits within our game, and we add it to our game, we may consider contracting that person or maybe offering them a job or something. So if you show stuff that fits in our game and we can immediately just put you in a production line, I think that's a plus. It's not a necessity, but...
Yeah, when I was teaching, basically anytime I talk to students, this is one of the subjects that kind of comes up around portfolio reviews. I think we're doing one later this evening here as well. But the one thing I think most people don't realize is hiring somebody is actually a pretty big risk on the employer side. You're putting a lot of time. You've got contract, you've got salary. You're bringing them in. It's training. It's getting the person up to speed. Like you're putting a lot of investment into the belief that you think this person is going to add value and become part a constructive part of your company, of your studio, of your team, right? And as part of that, I would say, especially toward a portfolio, but sort of to the same question with personality, is the closer you can see something in their portfolio that you would just be like, okay, I would copy paste that and ship that in my game, the less risk that candidate has. And so while I don't think it's required, in fact, I'd like to see a variety of like not only styles, but also just art interest and that kind of stuff in a portfolio. Because we also change what games we're making, and the styles of games can change, depending as you go along. Anytime you kind of see stuff that you're like, oh, I want to make that right now. Like, we just hired a concept artist today, and that was kind of the responses from the interview team is like, my environment artists were coming away and it's like, hey, that would totally plug into blah, blah, blah level right this second. It's like, can I start modeling that tomorrow? Like, and that's what you want to hear coming out of the interview loop. So definitely anything along those lines can help. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of times it is, when you're looking through thousands and thousands of portfolios, what are some of the things, is it really important to see the process? I know, at least for me, for teaching, it's really hard a lot to get my students to understand, to see the process, to show the entire process. So if you've, where did you get this concept from? How did you build that up? Is that important to be able to see in an artist, like that they can see the overall scope process, or they're just seeing that one finished product piece and they're not really connected?
I think sometimes it's interesting to see process, but I've usually looking at the final thing is enough for me. But if they say they modeled something that's a concept that they didn't do, then that should be clear in the work, that it wasn't your concept, it was this person's concept, and give them credit for it. But if it's all your work, the final is fine for me.
Yeah, I think the final is the most important thing. Like, it has to be amazing and go through. I do think showing process is a good, like, 1-2 punch, though. I like the behind the scenes on DVDs, and stuff just as much as the next person. So I do like to see, like, their texture sheets, how they're laying stuff out. You can kind of judge a lot as far as their efficiency and kind of their technical skill that goes into it. One of the biggest recommendations I have, though, is exactly what you're talking about, which is, like, first of all, make sure you give credit, but also don't try to do everything. Like, that's probably the biggest thing I see, and I made the mistake as a student as well, is trying to do everything along the process. One of the consistent things I've been telling students now for years is, for the most part, especially if you want to be a modeler, find somebody else at school who is an amazing lighter and become their friend. Buy them lunch, do whatever it takes, make them your friend, because most people can't light, especially coming out of school, and you don't need to. Like, that's a different job. It's a different job. Like, there's different industries, and so you don't have to be able to come up with a design, concept it, model it, texture it, light it. In fact, like, you don't have to make the entire portion of a game for most studios and in most situations, but you do need to be able to do the part that you're applying for and for that job very, very well. And so there's no shame. In fact, there's a lot of benefit to working with other people and showing that you can work with other people or work from other people's work. That's really, really good. Just make sure it's credited properly.
Those answers were very, very good answers. I wanted to know if you did the same answers if I asked you specifically as a 2D concept artist. Like, what is the importance you would say on iteration in 2D concept art versus 2D art versus 3D art?
So the question was, are the answers the exact same if you're talking about a 2D art position like concept art or something along those lines as it is for 3D art?
Do you mean for process?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say yes. Like, so with 2D concept art, generally, like I said, we just hired an environment concept artist. What I was looking for in the portfolio in that case was obviously finished pieces. I want somebody that could do a finished tone, piece that could speak to lighting, that we could use for marketing, that like overall could hold a theme of an overall scene. I was also looking for line drawings and call out stuff that we could, that production artists can actually work from and kind of go into. And in this case, the artist used 3D as a starting point. And so in his portfolio, he actually broke down, he showed what his 3D renders looked like. He basically showed his process. And then after talking, that was a large part of the phone interview, is going through each piece. It's like, okay, well, how did you do this? How much time did you spend? What was your, going into this? And then after that, he actually sent me a bunch more images that broke that down even further. So, like I said, there is a risk from the employer side when you're especially flying somebody from like San Diego all the way across country to come join your team. You want to make sure as much as possible that they're going to be a good fit, that they're going to be successful as a member of the team, and they're going to help the team be even more successful. And so the more you can see, the more you can show that's of quality and top notch, that fits that bill or helps, that I can say, okay, cool, you're going to fit just right in. That's exactly like our process for laying out concepts for these levels. The better chance you're going to have.
Yeah, like using 3D and 2D concept arts can be really helpful. If you're making a concept that's going to be 3D modeled and you understand 3D modeling, it usually helps on down the line. Like if you're going to concept a robot and you drew it and it looks really cool, but actually none of the joints function when you try to model it, that can be a problem. So if you can work out some of those problems on the concept end and even pass those models to the 3D artist as like, hey, this is how it functions. Or if you're doing a environment art and maybe that's going to be modular kit, when you were drawing it, maybe in your head you were thinking, okay, this is how the modeler is going to break it down later. That's always helpful for the going down the chain of the production of the art.
Yep. Yes. One of the biggest questions I've had in terms of applying is speed. How fast do you expect, does anyone ask it? How fast do you expect an artist to complete a finished environment concept, a character concept, or 3D model? Is there some sort of speed requirement that you expect from what's like a maximum or minimum that you expect?
Repeat the question first.
Yeah, so the question is there a designated, I guess, time frame for completing 3D models and concepts and other art? There definitely is, but the amount of time is going to depend on the project completely. Like, are you making a PC game or a mobile game, or is your art style photoreal, or is it stylized? That could all influence how long it takes to make a model. And I think after you go through maybe at the beginning of the project when you don't really know exactly what your art style is or what your game, it's going to be real fluid there. Like, we're going to try to make something and we'll see how long it takes, and maybe there's more than one artist working on it. After you've done it a couple times, you get a really good idea of, okay, to make a character, it's this 30 things that need to be done, and each of these things takes about this much time. And then at that point, then you pretty much have a step-by-step process where, okay, to do the concept, it's a couple days. To do the model, it's this many days. So when you start a project, you don't really know how long it's going to take, but artists obviously can't take forever. Once you've gone through your pre-production, you really have a good idea, but it's going to be different for every game and every team and every project.
Yeah, it definitely changes even within a project over the course of the development. To the hiring standpoint or talking to it, I do usually ask, like, as I'm going through the portfolios, like, okay, how much time did you spend on this? But it's less with like, okay, if he says anything over 18 hours, it's done. It's not that hard and fast, but it is to make sure that like just we're within a realm, right? Like if we're within some margin of error as far as like what our practices are, because it's just development environment's always different at different studios, or working from home versus working in the studio. And so I try to be as upfront as possible with where our expectations are and how long we're taking to kind of do the things, and then also trying to find out from him or her like how long they generally are taking for these things, to make sure that we're kind of in that same ballpark. So, but yeah, there's no like hard fast like it's always this.
Did you ever not hire someone because they take too long for
Yes.
Yeah, the question was, have you ever not hired somebody because they take too long? And yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, basically, like we're all on schedules and budgets and stuff like that. So even if you're Michelangelo, if you can't complete on time, there's going to be a problem.
Yes.
How do you evaluate if a new art technology is worth adopting for your team? Like time wasted learning it versus time saved with that piece of technology?
So the question is, how do you pick new technology, like tools for creating art?
Mm-hmm.
Usually for us, it's between major projects, or if an artist says, hey, check out this tool, it's going to save us tons of time, and if we have time to check it out, we might do it. But usually it's going to be in between. We kind of finished a project, maybe we're starting a new project. We're going to look at our whole art pipeline and look whatever is the most new modern tool and see if it's worth doing it, checking it out or not, and then we'll evaluate the software. Maybe artists will play with it for a week or something like that. And then at our company, it's up to me if we buy it or not. I'm not sure about Hi-Rez, but
yeah, it kind of depends on the department and who's going to be using it. So, like I think, kind of along the same line, a big stuff is definitely in between projects. I mean, you know, it's rare. It does happen, or you like switch engines, or you do something kind of major. But for the most part, once you're in production, you want to take advantage of the efficiency that you have of being in production versus any kind of pre-production. That said, there's always these small, like little, like plugins or standalone little side kind of software, and we generally adopt those fairly fast if we're going to, and a lot of that comes to the teams is our artists are artists all the time, and so usually they're just as much up to date, or the minute it's like announced there's a video, it's like out on GChat to the rest of the art team. Everybody's looking at it. Somebody downloaded the demo over lunch and was playing with it, and so usually either in their free time or are kind of going through, there's already some evaluation practice kind of going into place. So by the time we get to the point of like, okay, hey, we really should go ahead and get Substance Designer, at least half the team has already played with it and probably already started creating some assets, or at least trying to do what we're doing in the game in it on their own, or on demo versions, or that kind of stuff. So But anytime we're making a big kind of switch to a specific kind of program to tackle a certain part, we'll get a demo version. Obviously contract talks are going on, and we'll make sure that it kind of fits into, the software, into the package, and then we pull the trigger and go.
Is there a specific big ticket item recently, or what's the most recent big ticket item you said yes or no to, and been like, this is dumb? I don't know why it's so exciting. What you bought into?
So the question was, what's the most recent big ticket item that we thought was dumb? Like, yeah. Okay. I was supposed to say, I don't know about the last one that we were just like excited about that just didn't pan out. The last big ticket item on our side that we've said yes to, which has actually been really good, is we did an evaluation for Smite, and we're also using it for Paladins with Simplegon. About some additional functionality that they had, and they did a custom demo for us, and we've kind of been evaluating it for some of our LODs and other production practices. So, but I can't think of the last one that we were like, oh, this is going to be awesome, and then we tried it, and then we were like, oh wow, this is horrible. So, like I said, it usually like just playing with it, even for a day or half a day, or just trying stuff out, you find out really quickly that it's like, oh wow, this would be really cool if it didn't take twice as long as the normal way to do this, or something along those lines. That's usually where a lot of like the software falls apart, and the videos turn from like, oh, that's a pretty demo that you have there, to okay, that actually fits into a production cycle, is that it's actually as efficient or better than what you're actually already doing.
Yeah, we're evaluating Substance Painter right now, but I don't have an answer on that one yet. One thing that we used recently that's really cool was it's a plugin called Mesh Fusion for Modo. It's like subdivision surface booleans, and we can do subdivision modeling. Like, I don't know if you guys know what subdivision surfaces are, but it's like a contiguous surface that's got curved edges. Doing really complex shapes with that is really time consuming because you have to flow your topology. With the Mesh Fusion, you literally just boolean it together, and your mesh is all perfect and airtight and looks amazing. That is something that would take a month to model, and takes it to like a couple days. So I'd recommend that one.
One of the things with the advent of Steam and that getting products into everyone's hand, I know that with Smite it's now available on Steam, as well as Killing Floor 2 is available on Steam and it has Steam Workshop compatibility with it. What is it about being able to have that community? How do you see that community fitting in with the direction of art as it moves forward? Because now you're going to have millions, at least with Team Fortress 2 already, you'll have thousands and thousands of makers out there that might give you the greatest thing you ever saw, or it might be a box with a demon written on the side of it and nothing else. How do you see that those communities kind of flowing together to for the art?
For our games, community is a huge part of it, and community or user-generated content is a really big part of our games. And for Killing Floor 2, we just released Steam Workshop maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that, and we already have over 100 user-made items submitted to it, and a lot of those items are actually going to be integrated into the game, and it's very much like Team Fortress 2 works, where users can make content. They upload it to Steam Workshop. If our community likes it, we'll download it and check it out, and if it works out, we'll add it to the game and then split revenue with the users of that content. So for us, it's kind of it's a circular. Gamers can make content for our game, and then they can get money from it, and then users in the game, they get value from the other players that are making content. And then we get value because they're making more content for our game, so it's a nice circular process for us. And we also report mods. We have a mapping contest for KF2 right now, where it's like $50,000 in prizes. And if the maps are good enough, we'll add them to the game. And then we have a poly count contest right now for making like character accessory items and weapon skins, sort of like either TF2 cosmetics or CSGO weapon skins, and you can win prizes with that also. So we have a very small art team, so leveraging the community is really big for us to get more content in our game.
Is the Steam Workshop something that is a thought maybe for Smite?
Well, we currently, don't have that same kind of direct avenue for our community to put content in. Like, we're not part of the workshop and stuff, but community has always been a really, really big thing for Hi-Rez and for all of our games, and especially for Smite. And so while it's not a direct flow, if you look at a lot of the God design kind of kits and ideas and elements, and especially a lot of the skins that we've done and a lot of the content we've created, it's actually come through the community. Like our Reddit community is very strong, is very loud, is very educated, and has had a huge voice in what the game is and what it's become for the better. Some of my favorite skins are actually community suggested, concepted, and kind of driven kind of skins. Pixel Buster Freya is actually a good example of this, where it was actually a fan art created, from our customer base that then one of our concept artists made fan art of in his own time. He loved the idea so much that we then were like, oh my goodness, that's amazing, we have to put that in the game, and became one of, in my opinion, one of our better kind of skins for the god Freya. And so we do rely a lot on community, and it's not just from the game content side too, it's also on that rest of that community side. So if you look at a lot of our casters today and a lot of the people that are involved in community, and our production team, and our content team, for our Twitch channel and stuff, they all came from community. It's all people that were creating content for Smite before they came on board. So if you look at, it's a good example, a lot of the God reveals that we're doing now and the websites, which the quality is amazing for. They've got 2D animated scenes and stuff. The guy that's doing that actually was doing 2D video, like fan service videos for us as part of our community before we hired him on full time and stuff. So we definitely are pulling from the community, and there's definitely a lot of content creators in the Smite community and the rest of the communities for the Hi-Rez games. But yeah, we don't quite have that same kind of workshop direct funnel of assets yet.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be assets. It could be, players playing your game on Twitch, which Smite has a huge amount of them.
Yeah,
that's sort of like making content for your game. They're marketing your game for you. So it can come from a lot of different areas.
One of the things, and I'm going to throw this question to both of you. Besides your fantastic property that you currently work on individually, what are some of the IPs out there that catch your interest? What are you guys playing? What are you guys looking at as far as games that are out right now? What are you guys pulling from, besides what you're working on every day?
Well, pulling from is a little bit different. As far as what I'm playing, the Battlefront beta has been kind of like what I've been playing for the last few days. I've got some friends that worked on it, and it's beautiful. So I've been playing around in that. But I don't know, it's a little bit of everything. Like, I think that's just kind of goes with the territory. I'm constantly looking at the new games that come out. I don't get to play in depth nearly as much as I used to, but I do try to at least get a taste and make sure I'm either watching on Twitch or in some way kind of being able to pull through and see what's happening and what else is going on. Because it's exciting, especially with the mobile generation and all the games that are coming out of that. A lot of the indie games that are going on out there. There's a lot of really fresh and new, exciting kind of ideas that you're kind of seeing come around. And so, inspiration, artist, that's one of the other questions as far as going through is like, what do you do? And if you look at my team, as they come in every morning, they all have their little ritual that they kind of go through. They sit down, they turn on their light, they do this stuff. And for the most part, almost every single one of them has like a little 5 to 10 minute thing where they check these very specific sites and they go through and they look at art. It's like the first thing they do when they come in. It's like, oh, what else got posted? Oh, what beautiful things from here. What's this? And it just inspires you. And art's that way and games are that way. And so I try to pull in and absorb and kind of sponge as much as I can, because I know that's just going to give me ideas to kind of push my stuff further.
I've been playing Hearthstone a lot. Really. Awesome. It's kind of super addictive. And Super Mario Maker, which that's another game that uses community content in a really cool way. But my gaming is all over the place. I have like 15 game systems going all the way back to like NES and Dreamcast. And,
we need to party then.
Yeah. I have like a bathtub gaming center that I wheel out on a little cart, and so.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gaming all the time, doing a lot of different games. There's a bunch of new horror games on Steam I want to play that I haven't played yet. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place in gaming.
So as we start to get to the point of kind of winding this down, I'm going to throw it back to our audience for maybe some questions that you guys want to have while we have this wealth of knowledge here right now. Yes.
I'm looking at an applicant for a specific position, such as like 3D character modeling or something like that. How much do you look for experience in other areas, like 2D art? And is your answer influenced by team size on the project you're working on?
So the question is, when you're looking at applicants for 3D modeling, how much do you look at other aspects of game development, like texture mapping or something like that? Really depends on the position, but I think the more skills you have, the better you can contribute to the team. But if you're hiring a modeler and all you need is modeling, it's not a requirement that you do these other things, but it is good that you understand how to make UVs and texture map and stuff like that, because you can communicate with other artists you're working with better, and also if there's no modeling work right now, maybe you could jump on and help in this other aspect.
Yeah, I think it depends on what the role is. I mean, hopefully by the time you're interviewing applicants, you have a pretty well-defined understanding of what you're looking for and what you're trying to hire for. And sometimes with smaller teams or even larger teams, that person needs to be able to do many things. And sometimes it is a very specialized, like this person's just going to do this one thing. And that becomes the primary focus. Like if the person can do the job you're hiring them for is obviously the first major, biggest checkbox. Outside of that, though, I like people who are passionate about what they do, that study and live and are constantly evolving and growing in their craft. And so typically, whether it's concept or 3D modeling or any of those things, if they're really studying their craft, if they're growing, if they're passionate about it, they'll have an understanding of the context of how that fits into everything else around it. And so I don't need them to be able to kind of like go over and do the next person's job, but just having, you know, a working understanding of how that person's job happens, even if they can't necessarily execute at a shipping quality, it helps everybody. So
yeah, I think if I'm looking at an applicant and there's one applicant and I'm hiring a modeler and this person's an amazing modeler, but that's really all he does, or this other person that's mediocre in 10 things, I'm going to go with the amazing person. I'd rather have someone that's really good at 1 or 2 things than can do a lot of things but isn't very skilled or talented.
Yes.
So, how often do you guys use like outsource people, contractors, and if you do, what kind of problems do you guys run into?
So the question was, how often do we use, you know, external partners or outsourcers, and if we do, what kind of problems do we run into when we do that? So it's been different at each studio, and even different projects and times during development. For me, as far as my experience, I've kind of done the full gamut where I've worked with full-on external partners, which are, you know, like with EA we had, and same thing for CCP. We had a studio in Shanghai, and which was part of the same company. I mean, they were essentially employees of the studio, you know, just the same as I am. They're just on the other side of the world, to like working with completely different studios on the other side of the world, to working with individual contractors that both either came on site or worked off site. And I'd say in all of those cases, almost every issue comes down to communication. You know, there's a lot of other ones. There's technical stuff like, oh my goodness, their Perforce server, can, you know, the internet get any slower in Asia, you know, to like, how do we get past the government to get like the approvals and stuff. Like, there's a lot of those kind of issues, but primarily most of the time it's just communication. And you're dealing with people sometimes that speak a different language, or English is their second language, and you're having to be very specific because they're working while you're sleeping or doing that. So the way generally you address it is you have to document, and you have to be very specific and very clear in understanding, first of all, that you know what you want, and then being very kind of clear in how that's communicated in a way that they can understand it. And that's different depending on who the person is and where they live and what that is. And then always like as much communication back and forth, the better. When I was working, like Dead Space was tough because we were working with EA Shanghai, and part of the needs for that, they were doing entire levels. And so it was like I'd wake up in the morning, look at all their stuff, provide feedback, and then my team would get there. And then I'd work with my team throughout the day. And then about 6 o'clock, I would go into a conference room, which was about 9 a.m. their time. And I would start doing like streamed reviews of the levels and playthroughs with the team from there, kind of going through, because they need just as much attention, if not more, than those out of house. So.
Yeah, we use contractors pretty regularly. For us, it's good because we don't want our team size to get too big. So we might use a contractor because maybe we can't use that person all the time, but we have different time periods when we can use them, and then they can go do something else until we need them again. Or maybe we want to do something that we don't have the bandwidth for. Maybe we'll try to search out contractors to help us for that. And we've used outsourcers also. A lot of the same problems you talked about.
I think the biggest issue, and it's generally from kind of higher up, is understanding of it, is most people understand, like, you know, an outsourcer from a salary standpoint is generally cheaper than an in-house, you know, person. That's the reason people do it. But generally, it might take longer or be a little slower or do these different things, which people also understand. But you also need someone in-house to handle that communication, and that can be a full-time job. And that's usually where I think most studios kind of make the mistake, is they don't staff to do external development. Because they're like, what are you talking about? The whole reason we're doing external development is so we don't have to staff. And it's like, no. You're not getting this right. So you've got to make sure that you've got the infrastructure in place, that, you know, technology-wise, communication-wise, and staffing-wise, that you're set up to properly support those people out of house, that they can get the feedback they need, that you're providing that stuff so you can make sure that they're efficient and that they're able to be successful as well. From a contract standpoint, I think, like, pretty much across the industry, that's become fairly standard. Whereas, you know, games have come up, you need to quickly staff up, you need to hit this very specific problem, you've got 3 months or something like that. And so it's a very good and easy way to kind of extend your capabilities from a content creation standpoint. And certain parts of the art development pipeline are better or easier converted for that than others.
All right. Guys, we are at the end of our time together, but I want to take the left and the right and put them together for our panelists here, Mr. Holt, Mr. Hensley. Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.